Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very pleased to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. That text message was like lightning tearing through my peaceful sky. Just hours before the wedding was to begin, I received a message from Gareth that made my heart tighten. Don't go to your wedding. Go check your fiancé's closet. At first I thought it was just a prank. After all, today was my and Audrey's big day. But Gareth never jokes like this, especially when it comes to important matters. We had fought side by side on the world's most dangerous battlefields and had unconditional trust in each other's judgment. I sat in the spacious, bright bedroom of our new home, at 40 years old, in what should have been the happiest moment of my life. Audrey was at the hotel with her bridesmaids making final preparations. Outside the sun was shining, the town was peaceful and serene, but Gareth's message echoed in my mind like an alarm. I took a deep breath and walked toward Audrey's closet. This ordinary wooden closet looked normal, with her clothes neatly hung, emitting a faint floral scent. My hand gently slid over the garments, praying that Gareth was wrong. But when I doubtfully pushed aside a storage box labeled off-season clothes in the back of the closet, what I saw left me so stunned I couldn't speak a word. At the bottom of the storage box was a brand new cheap phone, clearly one of those prepaid disposable phones. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. With no password protection, Audrey probably thought hiding it here was safe enough. With slightly trembling fingers, I opened the messaging app, and what I saw made me feel as if I'd fallen into an icy abyss. On the screen were countless explicit conversations between Audrey and Preston. Preston was a successful car dealer in town, married, about 20 years older than Audrey. The messages not only confirmed their months-long relationship, but most shocking were their mockeries of me. That veteran really thinks he's still some kind of hero, not knowing that his little security business is nothing but child's play in my eyes, Preston wrote in one message. Audrey's reply cut me like a knife. Once the wedding is over, we'll have much more freedom. He spends all day studying those security systems, but can't see that the greatest danger is right beside him. I kept scrolling page after page. They even discussed how to use my security company's resources to obtain client information and how to arrange secret meetings after the wedding. The most disgusting was when Audrey asked Preston if he was worried about being discovered, and Preston replied, "His supposed state of alertness? Don't joke. I've seen too many men like him, strong on the outside but ridiculously fragile inside. He would rather believe everything is fine than face the truth." On the battlefield, I had witnessed comrades blown apart by bombs, survived 72 hours surrounded by enemies in extreme situations. But at this moment, seeing these messages, the pain I felt far exceeded those physical injuries. I thought the battlefield had taught me to recognize all the dark aspects of human nature, but I never imagined finding such betrayal in the person closest to me. I don't know how long I stared at that phone, but when the initial shock dissipated, a strange calmness replaced the anger. It was a state I only entered during the most dangerous missions, detached, rational, unaffected by emotions. I carefully put the phone back in its place, restoring it exactly as it was before being discovered. I needed to know the whole truth. It all started 2 years ago. At that time, I had just returned to this quiet town on the American East Coast after leaving the military and was beginning to establish my security consulting company. As a former member of the U.S. Army Special Forces, I had rich combat experience and professional skills, but felt somewhat alien to ordinary people's daily lives. 15 years of military career had shaped my rigorous, alert personality and had accustomed me to directly facing danger and threats. However, in this quiet town, the greatest danger seemed to be only occasional drivers exceeding the speed limit or teenage pranks. I began trying to integrate into the local community, participating in various activities, hoping to find my place. It was in this context that I met Audrey at a community book club. She was the local library administrator, with silky black hair and a gentle smile. When she stood among the crowd to introduce the recommended books of the month, I was immediately attracted by her intellectuality and elegance. "Today we'll be discussing human nature's choices in extreme environments," she said at the time. I believe what's most moving about this book is how it reveals the complexity within each of us. After the book club ended, I gathered the courage to speak with her, and we quickly discovered we had a wonderful complementarity. She loved literature and art and was good at expressing emotions with words, while I was more accustomed to expressing concern through actions and protection. I appreciated her gentleness and intellectuality, and she said she was attracted by my stability and reliability. Our dates were usually simple: having coffee at a town cafe, walking by the lake, or watching movies at her apartment. Audrey liked listening to me tell about my experiences around the world, though I was always careful to avoid details that were too bloody or confidential. And I enjoyed the various books and movies she recommended, cultural experiences that filled many aspects of ordinary life I had missed due to my long service. However, looking back, some subtle signs were present from the beginning. Occasionally, when I talked about how wonderful quiet town life was, I could catch a barely perceptible hint of disappointment in Audrey's eyes. When I mentioned that the security company had just started and needed to develop step by step, her reaction seemed a bit colder than I expected. "Have you thought about taking on bigger projects? Maybe in a big city?" she once asked. At that time, I just smiled and explained that I preferred to keep my feet on the ground, starting locally and gradually building a reputation. She nodded, showing understanding, but a flash of disappointment crossed her eyes. 8 months ago, after a year and a half of dating, I proposed to her. It was an ordinary weekend, having a picnic by the lake. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, falling unevenly on her face, and I suddenly realized I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this woman. I didn't prepare an elegant scene or surprises, just took out the ring and simply asked if she would marry me. She accepted, with a joy on her face that seemed so genuine. We decided to give ourselves 8 months to prepare a simple and cozy wedding. It was during this preparation period that my security company experienced a turning point. Through a recommendation from a former military colleague, I received a contract to upgrade the security system for a wealthy local businessman. This project greatly increased the company's reputation and income. I began hiring more employees, and the scope of business expanded from simple home security to corporate risk assessment and security training. It was also during this time that I first met Preston. It was at a town chamber of commerce dinner. Audrey attended as the library representative, and I was invited as a new business owner. Preston was the central figure of the dinner. He owned the largest car dealership in town and had considerable reputation in the business world. He was about 50, well-maintained, with elegant manners and the confidence and determination characteristic of a successful man. When Preston spoke with Audrey, I noticed a sparkle in her eyes that I had never seen when she looked at me. At the time, I attributed it to the lively atmosphere of the social occasion, but now I think it could have been her yearning for the lifestyle Preston represented: wealth, status, excitement. In the months following the dinner, Audrey suddenly showed unusual interest in my security work, especially in details about wealthy clients. "What kind of high-tech equipment do those rich people have in their houses? Can you see their financial information?" She would ask like this, and at the time, I just briefly explained some basic principles of security systems and emphasized our responsibility of confidentiality to clients. At the same time, she began frequently participating in community activities she hadn't been very interested in before, coincidentally all events that Preston would also attend. Her mobile phone suddenly had a new password I didn't know. Several times I woke up in the middle of the night and found she wasn't in bed, claiming she had insomnia and had gone to the living room to read. All these little things put together now seem like such obvious warning signals. But I, a trained former Special Forces soldier who should have a keen intuition for danger, chose to ignore these signals because I didn't want to believe that the person I deeply loved would betray me. A week ago, I had to make a short trip due to an urgent security project. The client was a retired general living in a neighboring city who feared someone was following him. This trip was supposed to last only 3 days, but due to the complexity of the situation, I had to extend it by 2 more days. During this time I was away, Gareth apparently had been watching my house. The phone suddenly rang. It was Gareth. "Did you see it?" he asked directly, with a tense voice. "I saw it," I replied, with a surprisingly calm voice. "How did you discover it?" Gareth explained that he was concerned about my house's security system, knowing I had made some dangerous enemies during my time in Special Forces, and took advantage of my trip to remotely check the system logs. He discovered that on the second night after my departure, late at night, there was a brief abnormal record of alarm deactivation and reactivation, roughly coinciding with the time a neighbor saw Preston's car parked on a nearby street. More importantly, Gareth continued, I had a friend check around your house the next day, and near the garden that Audrey usually tends, by the trash can, found an empty SIM card tray casually discarded, used for installing a new SIM card. Combining the abnormal system record and Preston's appearance, I immediately suspected there might be secret communication. I thanked Gareth for his vigilance and honesty, but still felt a deep sense of loss. So what do we do now? I asked, though I already had an answer in mind. That depends on you, Gareth said cautiously. But if it were me, I would make them pay the price, in a way they can understand. After hanging up the phone, I stood by the window, thinking deeply. 3 hours later, I was supposed to be waiting at the church altar for Audrey, who would walk towards me with her white veil. And now, I had to make one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I took out my own phone, deleted all photos with Audrey, and then sent a brief message to my team of groomsmen. Wedding canceled. Discovered unforgivable betrayal. Please notify guests. We'll explain details later. Then, I began planning my next step, not out of a simple impulse for revenge, but out of a deep, almost primitive need to make those who betrayed me experience the true cost of betrayal. The day of the wedding, the whole town was shocked. Guests were informed that the wedding was canceled for personal reasons, but rumors quickly began to circulate. I did not give a public explanation of the reasons, and this silence only fueled people's speculation. Audrey was completely bewildered. According to what Gareth told me later, she appeared at the church in her wedding dress, only to be greeted by the confused and compassionate looks of the guests. When she learned the wedding had been canceled, she collapsed on the spot. She tried to contact me countless times, but I had already initiated a carefully prepared isolation procedure, changed my phone number, temporarily closed my social media accounts, and even temporarily changed my place of residence. I did not choose to directly confront Audrey, not out of fear, but because I needed time. Time to calm the anger in my heart. Time to formulate a plan that wouldn't make me regret. Time to ensure that every step I took was within legal and moral boundaries. Though at that moment the moral boundaries in my mind had already been greatly blurred. For a week, I lived in Gareth's safe house in a neighboring town, coldly analyzing the situation and formulating a plan. This mentality and methodology were exactly how I handled high-risk missions when I was in the Special Forces. Assess the enemy situation, identify weaknesses, develop multi-level strategies, and then calmly execute. Only this time, the enemies were the people I had trusted most. I first considered the simplest, most direct method, publicly exposing their infidelity and calculations. I could send those messages and photos to Preston's wife, post them on social media, or spread the news around town. But this method was too crude and might bring me legal risks. More importantly, it wouldn't really reach the bottom of their fears and weaknesses. After careful consideration, I decided to adopt a more refined and lasting strategy, a method that would destroy them from within. Not through direct violence or public humiliation, but through gradually eroding everything they valued: social status, economic security, psychological stability. I first focused on Preston. As a successful businessman, he had 3 main weaknesses: his concern for social reputation, family stability, and business success. Anonymously, I sent several skillfully manipulated photos to Elise, Preston's wife, taken in public places, showing Preston socially interacting with different women, not including Audrey. The angles and contexts were carefully chosen, accompanied by ambiguous but suggestive texts. Are your husband's business meetings really just business? These photos were carefully selected from social media and community event photo libraries from the past few months. By themselves, they provided no conclusive evidence of infidelity, but were enough to sow seeds of suspicion in a marriage. I deliberately avoided directly mentioning Audrey, because my goal wasn't simply to expose their relationship, but to create a continuous, invisible pressure. Next, I used my professional skills to create a series of disquieting coincidences and small incidents in Preston's daily life. For example, I found an employee at the golf club Preston frequented under the pretext of consulting about security system upgrades, but actually to learn about Preston's daily routine. I discovered he practiced alone on Wednesday nights, which gave me an opportunity. In the following weeks, Preston's golf clubs always mysteriously appeared rearranged. Sometimes his locker had problems with the lock, and the course he reserved was occasionally canceled due to system error. These incidents alone weren't enough to constitute harassment, but accumulated were enough to make a person already nervous about marital problems feel uneasy. At the same time, I began undermining Preston's business reputation. Through a former financial analyst working at my security company, I obtained insider information about the automotive industry. Then, using this information, I anonymously provided several of Preston's main business competitors with some clues about possible gray operations at his dealership. I heard the recent sales data at Newton dealership has some issues. Many supposedly sold vehicles actually haven't left the showroom. This appears to be artificial creation of a sales performance bubble to obtain more brand quotas. Information like this soon circulated within the local car dealer circle. I didn't provide specific evidence or make direct accusations, but in the business world, sometimes once the seed of doubt is planted, it grows on its own. Soon, other dealers began to be wary of Preston, and the regional factory manager also began examining his sales data more closely. For Audrey, I adopted a different strategy. I didn't contact her directly, but let her bear the pressure of the unknown and isolation. I selectively revealed partial evidence of Audrey's betrayal to several influential people in town, especially those related to her misuse of her library position for personal gain. In the phone conversations, Audrey had boasted to Preston about how she used literary nights organized by the library to create opportunities for them to meet, how she used her access to readers' private information to learn about the reading habits and interests of wealthy people in town, so Preston could better establish relationships with potential clients. These actions, though not necessarily illegal, were definitely a serious breach of professional ethics. I didn't make this information public, but through a casual conversation, hinted at this to a member of the library board. Some recent behaviors of Audrey concern me, especially regarding reader privacy. I don't want to provide too many details, but I believe as a board member, you have the right to know about these potential issues. My voice was full of regret and concern, as if I were a pained husband forced to expose his loved one. This approach was more effective than a direct accusation because it stimulated the board member's initiative to investigate and judge for himself. Gareth and several of my former combat comrades also played a role in this plan. They began spreading doubts about Audrey's character in the community, not through malicious attacks, but through seemingly concerned ways. I really feel sorry for Miles. He's a good man. He shouldn't go through this. This type of insinuation is more effective than direct accusation because it can influence people's opinions without the need for concrete evidence. A month later, my plan began to show effects. Preston's marriage showed obvious cracks. His interaction with Elise in public places became tense and cold. There were rumors that Elise had hired a private detective and consulted a divorce lawyer. Meanwhile, Preston's car dealership business was also affected. Several long-term clients opted for his competitors, and the factory began conducting a special audit of his dealership. Audrey's situation was even worse. The library board initiated an internal investigation into her under the pretext of needing to evaluate professional ethics. Although they found no conclusive evidence, the investigation itself was enough to generate suspicion among her colleagues. Her previously active social circle began to shrink. More and more people avoided her at community activities. The cruelest part was that no one directly accused her of anything, but that silent rejection was more painful than any public accusation. However, I didn't feel satisfied with these preliminary results. I knew the true victory wasn't seeing their temporary distress, but ensuring they fully understood the consequences of betrayal. 2 months later, I received a message from Gareth. Preston and Audrey are secretly meeting at a motel on the outskirts of town. Looks like their relationship is strained. Do you want to intervene? I replied that it wasn't necessary, because I knew this was the natural development of my strategy. When external pressure increases, people tend to seek comfort and support, but when two selfish people face a crisis, they usually consider saving themselves first rather than supporting each other. And indeed, 3 days later, Audrey appeared at the door of my company. She looked exhausted, with red and swollen eyes, obviously having been crying. My assistant, following instructions, told her I wasn't in the office, but she could schedule a meeting for next week. Audrey refused to leave until security guards politely asked her to leave. That same night, I received an email from her. I don't know how she found my new email address. The content of the email revealed her desperation. Miles, I know you're avoiding me, and maybe you have good reasons to do so, but please give me a chance to explain myself. Preston betrayed me. He told his wife I was the one who seduced him. Now the whole town is talking about me, and I might lose my job. I never thought things would end up like this. This email confirmed my prediction. When pressure comes, Preston wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice Audrey to protect himself. I didn't reply to this email, but took it as another confirmation point for my plan. 2 weeks later, I accidentally ran into Preston at a cafe. He was visibly haggard, with marked dark circles under his eyes, and his suit was no longer as well pressed as before. When he saw me, he first startled, then pretended calmness and nodded in greeting. I responded with a smile, as I would with any community member I wasn't very familiar with. At that moment, I saw the fear in his eyes, not fear of possible direct revenge from me, but fear of the unknown. He couldn't be sure how much I knew, nor could he predict what my next step would be, and this uncertainty was more destructive than any direct threat. 3 months later, Preston's car dealership was officially investigated for financial irregularities. Although this was not directly caused by me, the seeds of doubt I planted at the beginning certainly accelerated this process. His marriage ended with a costly divorce, and Elise obtained most of his assets in the divorce settlement. Meanwhile, Audrey also received a formal warning from the library for professional ethics issues. Although she kept her job, her position in the community had fallen drastically. The most ironic part was that her isolation in town was largely due to rumors spread by Preston, who, to divert attention from his own marital crisis, placed all the blame on her. Audrey tried to recover. She began appearing frequently at community activities, trying to rebuild her image. But the town's memory is stubborn. People followed her with their gaze, and the whispers never ceased. She even tried to contact me again, sending a series of messages, from anger to remorse, from accusations to pleas. "I know it's you who's driving all this," she wrote in one message. "You could have confronted me directly, given me a chance to explain myself. But you chose this path. This is not what a truly strong person would do." Reading this, I almost laughed out loud. She still didn't understand that true power isn't in direct confrontation, but in the strategic use of influence. I didn't reply to any of the messages. This silence was my most powerful response. 6 months later, Preston's car dealership went bankrupt, and he moved to another state hundreds of miles away, trying to start anew. But the characteristic of the internet age is that your past will always follow you. He faced unexpected difficulties when looking for work in the new city, and whenever a potential employer searched his name, news about financial irregularities and marital failure appeared. Audrey finally also left town. Under continuous isolation and pressure, she resigned from her job at the library and is said to have gone to the West Coast. Before leaving, she sent messages to several people in town, claiming she had been falsely accused, that she had been jointly framed by an extremely controlling ex-fiancé and a despicable married man. But this small town had already lost interest in her. People had new topics of conversation, new gossip, new dramas. The story of Audrey and Preston was soon diluted in the flow of time, only occasionally mentioned as a cautionary tale. Remember that librarian and the car dealer? They say they're both living miserably now. And me? I put all my energy into developing the security company. The company doubled in size within a year, and I began accepting some more challenging international projects. I didn't publicly discuss the true reason for the wedding cancellation, but my silence and subsequent professional success earned me even more respect. Some might say my approach was too cruel, but from my perspective, I just let natural laws do their work. Betrayal inevitably brings consequences, and those who choose to betray must take responsibility for it. I didn't directly harm anyone, just ensured they couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. A year and a half later, one afternoon, Gareth and I were sitting on the terrace of my new lakeside villa having a drink. The sun was about to set, reflecting golden light on the surface of the lake. "Have you ever regretted it?" Gareth suddenly asked. I knew what he was referring to. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "It's not regret, but release." I could have confronted them directly, made a scene, and then let everything end. But that would only have made me another poor out-of-control person after being betrayed. I chose a different path, one that made them truly experience the cost of betrayal. Gareth nodded, raising his glass. To your new life. I clinked my glass with his, watching the sun slowly sink into the lake. The pain of the past won't completely disappear, but it no longer controls my life. I have already made those who betrayed me pay the price, and now it's time to truly look forward. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but moving beyond. This is the final victory of a warrior when faced with betrayal. Life continues, and I choose to move forward in my own way. Without Audrey, without those lies and deceptions, only with clear knowledge and unwavering determination. Because in this complex world, the only thing that can be completely trusted is one's own judgment and a few true friends tested in the fire of battle. New projects await me, new challenges call me. And that phone discovered before the wedding, that evidence of betrayal, has already become the past, a painful but necessary lesson, reminding me that even the closest people may hide the deepest deception. If this story has resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.